Hey everybody, welcome back to the Back to Bits podcast, presented by the Gamers Lounge, the retro video game podcast. Yes, we haven't been around for a while, but it's okay. We're here now. I'm John. That's D-Pad Danny. How's it going, Danny?
It's going, man. It's good to be doing this again. It's been too long.
Yeah, it has. We've always had something come up if it's not work or personal stuff or family stuff or vacations or something like that. But we've been wanting to try to get back into the swing of things. So hopefully we'll get back on a regular schedule. That's what we're attempting to do. Fingers crossed. Sometimes, what's bad is with me is where I work out of town. Sometimes I have to leave on odd days to get to where I needed to go. Like last Sunday, I had to leave at like 11 o'clock to get to work so I could be at work at 7 a.m. on Monday. So it is what it is. That's how things go. So,
Yeah.
But that's all right. We're back now. That's all that matters. Yeah. So we'll start off like we always do with anything new or exciting pickups or what any cool things we've played. I'll let you go first, Danny. I know you've probably got some cool stuff.
Yeah, sure. So I recently picked up a Magnavox Odyssey 2. It's not a system that I've ever really bothered seeking out. It's not something I ever really was like, oh man, I got to get me one of those.
Yeah.
But they just happen to have one at the local game store, and I didn't really see anything else that was tickling my fancy, so I was like, yeah, why not? I'll pick it up. It came with a CIB of what is it, Alien Invaders Plus?
Yeah, it's like the Space Invaders. Yeah.
Right. I mean, because, there's a million of those clones out there for those older systems.
And that was the time, because, let's see, was that 83? 82? I can't remember what year the Odyssey 2 came out. I have one.
Sure.
It's my original. It's the first console I ever had. So,
oh, wow.
Console that I ever had.
Sure.
So I've got it still in the box, instructions and everything. I think I've got 20 or 30 games for it. I don't even know. I haven't pulled it out in so long and played it because I really haven't had a TV it would work on. But now that I have the PVMs, I could probably hook it up to a VCR and run it into them that way. But
that's how I do my old consoles for like Intellivision 2, Atari 2600, and now the Magnavox. I've only plugged it in once to test it out, and it works. It seems pretty cool, but I only have one game for it, so it's not really something I see myself pulling out very often. But it's a neat little console. It's got the keyboard like on the console.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat.
Pickaxe Pete. That's the one that I always recommend. That's the one I have is Pickaxe Pete. That was my favorite.
You mentioned that one.
I mean,
I'd like to get the.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'd like to get KC Munchkin. That one looks.
I have that one. Yeah, I got that one. That one's a good one too. There's a lot of them. I have a couple of them. I want to say there was 3. I have 2 of the 3. They were like a adventure role-playing game that comes.
Oh yeah, in the big box.
Yeah, they're big boxes. They have boards that are like the size of normal board games with pieces and everything on it. I have one that's like a Risk game where you like try to conquer different worlds, and then the other one was like a dragon slaying Dungeons and Dragons game. I never played that one actually. My buddy had an Odyssey 2 as well, and he sold his in a yard sale years ago, and that was the one game that he kept and gave me because all the other games he had, I had. So I inherited it, and I swear I don't ever remember playing it when we were kids, and I've never really sat down and looked at how to play it. But
it's just a neat concept, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool. The whole you can use the game console as well as the physical media to play these games. It's pretty neat. I wouldn't mind seeking out 1 or 2 of those at some point just to see what it's all about.
Yeah, I don't think they're too awfully expensive. Honestly, I've never looked at the prices of the Odyssey 2 games, so I have no idea. So I may be talking out of my head.
I feel like I've seen them on Facebook Marketplace at some point for. I don't know. I want to say they had like 3 of them. It might have been all 3, but they were selling it for like $80 to $100 for all 3. So you got to wonder if, I mean, it's not terrible, but you got to wonder what kind of market there is for stuff like that because it's very niche. It's how many people are really looking for that.
Well, and nowadays, who has a TV to play it on? That's the trick. Is playing it on an LCD TV. I know I have an adapter in mind that I could screw it directly into the coax, but I don't know if I don't remember if that even works anymore. I don't know. I actually have a tube TV with the coax here. I could try it if I wanted to. But
sure.
The TV that I tried it on was an HD TV that was a big HD tube TV, and it never worked. And I don't know if that's just because it was HD or if it was, or what the what the deal was with it. So, but
I'm not sure.
yeah, I'm never piddled with it enough. It's been in the box for 20 years or more.
That's fair.
What else? Anything else?
Yeah. So, my NES collection's where I want it for right now. So I took last year off buying NES games, so I spent a lot of time shoring up numbers for other consoles that I had. I bought a lot of Wii games and Genesis games and stuff like that. But this year, I've decided, because I hate money and it's overrated and stupid, that I'm going to concentrate on my Saturn collection.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So if anyone who out there that doesn't know, Sega Saturn is an expensive console to collect for.
So.
You don't see the games pop up in the wild very often, and usually when you do, it's a sports game with a cracked case.
Yep.
So it's going to be a lot of eBay, a lot of Facebook, a lot of stuff like that to find them. But so, in the spirit of that, I've been picking up a few here and there. I recently picked up Clockwork Knight for the Saturn.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's deceptive because it's easy the first couple stages, and you're like, oh, this is, a pretty basic platformer, nothing special about it. And then when you get to the last level, it severely spikes in difficulty.
Yeah, it really does.
I played it through to completion about a week ago or so, but it definitely took me a lot longer than I anticipated, especially with how easy some of the early enemies and stuff were. But not a terrible game. It's one I've never played before, other than I remember my dad had a demo, when you get those multi-demo discs for PC, because I know they put it on PC as well. Yep. And so I remember the game, but I wasn't like, I remember how to play it or anything like that. So it was fun. I enjoyed it. Not the best platformer I've ever played. Like I said, it is kind of basic.
Yeah.
It's got some neat things going for it, and I'm sure at the time the 3D graphics were probably pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's the one Saturn game I don't have that I would really like to have is Clockwork Knight. I haven't. I've only played the demo. Well, I played it back in the day, but since then I've only played the demo of it because that's all I have. But
right, it's worth getting, and it's not that pricey. I think mine cost me $20 or less.
Yeah,
I think
it's something like that. It's not very much.
Yeah. It's one of the commons on the console. So, on the other side, some games that did not cost $20 or less. I picked up a Stall, which is a very pretty platformer. Yeah. It's okay. The play style is all right. It's not the best, but it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous game. Like lots of really pretty colors, kind of like Rayman, where it's like all these really nice colors, really beautiful sprite work. And that one's. I got close to the end, I think, but the game doesn't tell you that you only get one continue. Most games when you die, it's like, oh, continue, and it's like it'll show the number of continues you have.
Yeah.
No, this one's just like continue. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. It's got unlimited continues. Then the next game over I got was just game over. I'm like, are you kidding me? I got trolled. Exactly. I got trolled by the game. Still a fun game and still one I'm going to try to beat here soon. Yeah. But that one was a little bit pricey. But the final game I'm going to talk about today was relatively pricey. Yeah. So the Cotton series, I don't know how many people are aware of that. It's a series of side-scrolling cute-em-ups where you play a young girl witch, and it's got a lot of really good music, a lot of really good sprite work. And the Sega Saturn version, Cotton 2 Magical Night Dreams, I've wanted for a long time, because Cotton 1, I think, is only on the PC Engine CD, and I don't have that console, and the game itself is very pricey. I think you're looking like $200 or so. Yeah. So the only one I would be able to get is the Sega Saturn one, because I have an action replay, so I have the ability to play Japanese games.
Right.
And I had a little bit of extra cash, and I was watching one that was at a really low price. Of course, it didn't stay a really low price. I won't say how much I spent on it, but I still got it for a decent deal compared to market value. And I was talking to somebody, and they're like, oh, are you going to stay up and watch it? I'm like, well, it ends at 3 a.m., so not likely. Yeah. Well, guess what I was doing at 3 a.m.? Yeah, I was watching it, and I won it. And about 2 or 3 weeks later, it came in. I was so excited. I popped it in, and I beat it my first playthrough. Yeah. And then I beat it 3 or 4 more times the next day. It is so good. Yeah. So if you have the means to play it, and you have like I said, if you don't care about money, It's a really, really good one. I'd highly, highly recommend. It's a lot of fun, and I'm very glad I purchased it.
Yeah.
Much justified in the cost.
The only system that I can think of that's more expensive to collect for is one you said was PC Engine CD. Those are
Yeah.
insanely expensive too.
Well, especially since a lot of those games didn't even come out over
Right.
here, you know,
Yeah.
like because the Turbo Graphics didn't do well at all over here. I mean, I think the U.S. Not including the CD attachment, I think the U.S. Turbo Graphics set is only like 97 games or something like
Something
that.
like that. It's not much. The only way I know is on my Everdrive. All the games fit in one folder, and you can only have a max of. Well, the way the Everdrives work, I think you can only have a max of like 100 games in one folder for them to read them
Right.
all, and that's all. And the Japanese is broke up into two. But that's not even counting, of course, the CD games because
Right.
I have a CD unit for my PC Engine, but it doesn't. I don't know. It was weird. I bought it and fixed it, and it worked, and then it didn't work, and I sent it to a guy, and he fixed it, and it was working. By the time it got back to me, the piece had come loose. Apparently, it's like a piece in the housing that holds the thing. I don't know. It was weird, and I've just never messed with it again. Now, when you turn it on, the laser just goes all the way to the end and just stays. It just goes bum bum bum. Just keeps slamming into the housing. So it's like one of these days I'll send it to my mod buddy and say figure out what's wrong with it. But as of right now, it's like I'm probably not going to buy games for it because it's very expensive. And you know, it's like it's nice to have because I have it in the little the case thing, the interface unit they call with the little handle. It looks like a little briefcase. And there's been a couple times I've thought, well, I may just sell it, but I hate to because they're so hard to come by and they're expensive.
Sure.
So
It's a nice thing to have anyway, just to say that you have it.
yeah. So, but yeah, it's Saturn games are insanely expensive, and of all the years that I have started back collecting pretty steady, I've only seen Saturns one time in the wild, and well, twice in the wild, and one of them I got, and it was all the stuff was for a buddy. I'd already had everything else. He didn't have a system or anything. I think the only game I kept out of it was that Galactic Attack.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that I didn't have. Oh, and Virtua Cop 2. But other than that, those are the only two games I have bought for the Sega Saturn, and ever since I've got one, and that's been almost 15, 17 years. I've never explored even buying anymore because it's just like, man, some of them games are $150, $200 a pop, and my limit on buying games is, and we talked about this over chat one time, is $60. I'll spend $60 on a game, a rare game, but I'll spend more on a lot of games, something that I can parse out. But when it comes to just one single game, it's really hard for me to spend over $60, $70 unless it's just some stupid, crazy deal that's of a game that I've not seen and will never see again. Then I might, but.
Right. If you see a $500 game for $150, it's like, okay, I might have to get that. Yeah,
exactly. But most of the time it's just like, nah. And I peruse eBay, but I don't usually buy off eBay unless it's a good deal.
Right.
And we do have a little local store here that I catch them napping on prices every once in a while.
That's always fun.
Yeah.
That's all I got for pickups here recently. What did you get?
What I've started doing, I don't know if we talked about it the last time we recorded or not, but I was in the process of getting a Game Gear AV modded so I could play it on a television. And that's kind of been a weird trip because it's been almost a year ago that we got this started. And I actually got the system 2 or 3 months ago, and it worked for like 20 minutes. And then it just quit. And it was really strange, and the guy that modded it said, well, I don't understand what happened. Send it back to me. So I sent it back to him, and he fixed it, played with it for about an hour, said, I don't see any problems with it, sent it back to me, and as soon as I plugged it in again, it just immediately just never even had a screen for 5 seconds and went away. Come to find
It's
out
weird.
what it was, I sent it back to him again, and he actually had one of his friends who's an electrical engineer look at it, and some of the Game Gear boards they can't handle the voltage. And this was like apparently it was like an early board, so they had to get a voltage regulator to put on it so it could take the right juice for the amount of time. So what I've been doing for the past couple months while I was waiting on that, I've actually been buying a lot of Game Gear games. What's funny is a lot of them have popped up locally for pretty cheap. I did go to the local store down the road here and picked up Aerial Assault, Psychic World, Monaco GP, and Defenders of Oasis, and I paid less than $40 for that whole lot, which really surprised me because Defenders of Oasis is usually about a $25 game. They actually had it for $10, so I was like, zoink, I'll take that real quick before somebody figures out what's going on. But like the other day, there was a local guy selling a lot with a broken Game Gear.
Always.
Yeah, they're always broken. But it had like I'd already had it. It come with like Sonic, Alien 3. I already had that. Sonic 2. I already had that. But I did have Sonic Chaos, Fantasy Zone, Chuck Rock,
Nice.
and Jurassic Park. And for all that, he wanted $20 for it.
Oh wow.
So I ended up
Yeah,
buying
just
it.
get this junk out of my attic.
yeah. So I bought it for $20. Sold the broken Game Gear with the 2 Sonic games that I already had for $20 on eBay, and my buddy bought the Alien 3 game for $20 or $10. So that's what I've been trying to do. I'm just trying to think. I know there's been several more games, Game Gear games that I've bought since we last talked. Sliders. I got another copy of Haley War, which I sold to a buddy that I already had. Woody Pop, which is actually a pretty fun game. Space Harrier. I finally got it. So I went from like 10 Game Gear games to last year getting like 42 now, I think, so I'm up to.
Nice.
I have more Game Gear games than I have Master System games, and that's just kind of sad.
Well, I mean, when you consider the price difference, I mean, Game Gear games are still relatively cheap by and large. I mean, Master System games have kind of come up over the last 5 years or so in price, especially when you consider something like Phantasy Star or something that costs like $45 to $60.
Right. The one that I was most excited that I got, we went to Florida back in November on a little vacation. And we were in Bradenton, Florida, and there was a little video game shop down the street from the condo that I hit up, and they actually had a copy of Crystal Warriors.
Oh, nice.
And I had never seen that one before, not in the wild anyway, not even in a shop. So I was like, for $17, I'll take it. You know, we had to get back on a plane, so I couldn't buy a whole lot to take on a plane because we were trying not to, bring suitcases. So
you don't want to get stuck with those bag check charges,
right? Yeah, didn't want to get that. So it's like, okay, next time we come, I'll buy stuff, box it up, and mail it. But yeah, there's. I was trying to think what else I might have got. X-Men 3 or X-Men Mojo's World, X-Men 2. Then I got the 2 of the 3. Mickey Mouse games, Land of Illusion and Legend of Illusion. So the only
I've heard
one
good things about those.
Yeah, the only one I don't have is Castle of Illusion. I've got to get that one. That's the second one, I think, or the first one. I don't know. But really, there's not very many. There's not very many more Game Gear games that I actually want to buy. I've pretty much bought them all. But it's like I say, even though I have an Everdrive with every Game Gear game on it, I still end up buying the games. I still like to have the games, even though I've got them all on an Everdrive. But if anything, the Everdrive lets me try them out. But
yeah, you know which ones you want to spend the money on.
Yep. The other thing that I picked up is really not a game. They are game related. I did get a RetroTink 2X. My original plan with that was to replace my SCART to HDMI that comes out of my PVM with the RetroTink to use for streaming. Unfortunately, after I actually got it here and hooked it up, the sink that comes out of the PVM is a chroma sink, and the sink that the RetroTink needs is a Luma sink. So there was no way to get it to recognize that signal unless I actually bought like a sink stripper that was very expensive and very hard to find. Right. So what I ended up doing is I just ended up buying the HD Retrovision cables again. This time I bought the Genesis and the Super NES, along with the Saturn adapter and the PlayStation adapter. So literally now every system I have, with the exception of the N64 because I need to get it RGB modded, I can play through the RetroTink 2X. And pretty much for those who don't know what a RetroTink is, it's kind of like a FrameMeister, a low-end FrameMeister. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles. It only does 480p. It's essentially a line doubler, so it takes the 240p signal, doubles the lines to 480, and that's it. There's a smoothing option if you want the smoothing option, but for the most part, I don't use the smoothing option. I don't want it to be smooth. I want it to have that pixely look like it's on a PVM. And I tell you what, right, for the price that the RetroTink is, you can get it directly from the guy for $99. That thing is fantastic. It looks really good. It takes S-Video, component, and composite. Now, composite still looks like garbage through it, but if that's the only way you've got to play, then it works. S-Video looks really, really good through it. Of course, the HD Retrovision cables look the best, but, you know, if you don't want to pay $65 for each cable, and then I think the adapters were anywhere from $12 to $15, depending on the adapters you get. One thing I got them through Castlemania. That's about the only place you can get them anymore. A lot of times with Castlemania, you can find a coupon code, and I think I ended up saving like 15 or 20% off the order. So I got them for a little bit cheaper than what you normally would get them for. But
I've seen you test some of those out. I've seen you do the test streams for the Genesis and the Saturn, and it looks beautiful. It looks fantastic.
I'm more than I'm so pleased with the turnout of it. I was surprised. I didn't figure. I've always been that guy who, if I'm going to play retro games, I'm going to play them on a PVM or a TV, you know, some kind of, you know, original.
The way it was meant to be played.
Yeah, the way it was meant to be played. But I tell you what, I can get used to playing them like this. I haven't seen any lag. You know, for the most part, I mean, it's plug and play and go. You know, I got my Saturn adapter in the other day, so I did a test stream with the Saturn. Yep. And man, that makes it shine so much that you could tell how bad some of those Saturn graphics were with the pop-up. I mean, it cleaned it up almost too much. You know, you can really, I could playing it like that where it's clean and I can see everything. It's like, yeah, this was supposed to be a 2D machine, not a 3D machine.
It really was. Yeah, a lot of people think it's a 3D console, but no, it's just a really powerful 2D console.
Yeah, that's all it is a powerful 2D console. So, but yeah, I mean, if you're looking to do something like that and you don't want to spend $400 on a FrameMeister, if
you can even find one anymore.
Yeah, well, you can still find them on eBay, but you're going to pay out the flipping nose for them.
Yeah.
You know, that to me, that's the way to go, especially if you're just wanting something that's no frills, no, you know, simple, easy to use. I say go for it. And streaming couldn't be easier. Because it's HDMI, you just plug it right into the Elgato, put it in the software, and go. I mean, and I haven't had any issues whatsoever with it. I mean, it's been perfect. But now the trick is I got to get a component switch that doesn't degrade the quality of it, so I'm not constantly plugging and unplugging component cables from the thing. But, you know, I've always liked the HD Retrovision cables, but the trouble was my TV here behind me, well, really any of the TVs in the house, wouldn't accept a 240p signal. So I would hook them up to that TV and it still wouldn't work, so I ended up just selling them because I didn't need them. I ended up getting a PVM. And yeah, you can plug those into the PVM and they work just fine. But at the same time, it's like, if I've got a PVM and I've got SCART, why do I want, the Retrovision cables?
Right.
But if I was looking back at it now, I probably would go Retrovision cables with the PVM and not the SCART cables, because you only have 2 cables. That's all you have to mess with. Because you got adapters for PlayStation, you got adapters for the Genesis One, you got adapters for the Saturn, you got they even make an adapter for the it's the one of the Neo Geo systems. I think it's the AVC or maybe the
AVS. AVS. I don't remember which one's the arcade one.
Yeah, I don't remember either. But anyway, they work good on that, and then they look fine on a PVM. And like I said, the cables are $60. If you buy 2 cables for $60, you're going to spend $60. Well, you're going to spend more than $60 in good SCART cables. Good quality SCART cables is going to cost you $20 a pop, and by the time you get one for NES or Super NES, and you get one for the Genesis, you get one for, if you can find one for TurboGrafx, you have to have an adapter for it to work, which I happen to have at a cheap Chinese knockoff adapter that works fine.
Sure.
Which didn't work fine with the SCART cables. It caused noise, but with the HD Retrovision cables, it's perfect. Which is kind of odd, but they are a good quality 70 ohms cable. So I think that has a lot to do with it too. There's a lot less noise on there. But so yeah, you're going to see a lot more retro streams from me, because now that I actually have everything set up to where I want, the way I want it, I should be playing a whole lot more. And I'll play some more Saturn when I get my little adapter back, because I do have some repo Saturn games, but I have no way to play burnt games on my Saturn right now.
Really?
Well, the card got an update, so it was like, well, I need to send my card somewhere to get flashed so they could have the newest software, because that was what's bad when you flashed. The old way with you flashed with the Action Replay, you lost the memory card feature of it. Well, this new update they did to the flash to play backup games on the Saturn, it allows you to use the memory save on it again. So now I can finally stop having to save it to the system, then turn off the system, then put the cartridge, and then put my memory card cartridge in, then transfer them over, so when the battery dies, I don't lose one.
Right. I ran into that issue recently with Blazing Dragons. I played halfway through, and I went to play it again. Like, I turned it off and turned it right back on to make sure that it was still there, and yeah, the data was still there. And then the next day, it was just gone. I had to replace the battery, and it was good to go after that.
Yeah, that's really odd how it does that sometimes with the Saturn. But the way they were doing backup saves on the CDs, they still hadn't figured that out quite yet. So, until the PlayStation come along, and then it did. So, but I figured we'd get into a little bit of news. There's not a ton of news to talk about, but there was a couple things I wanted to touch on.
Right.
More or less PSAs of what's coming out. If I can get my thing to work here. Jeez. There we go. My iPad just doesn't want to agree with me. I'm using an old iPad. It's nobody's friend. So Analog NT, that is the that is the NES version of the company Analog made. It's a cool system that plays NES and Famicom games. Then they did a Super Analog, which does Super NES and Super Famicom games. And it doesn't use emulation. Well, it uses emulation, but it uses a chip that emulates the original hardware. So however you program that chip, it thinks it's a Super NES, or it thinks it's a Famicom. I think it's this month, or maybe it's next month, they are bringing out the Genesis version of that. It's HDMI out, does full 1080p. 8-Bit Do is making a M30 wireless controller to go with it that looks like a Genesis controller. It looks almost like a hybrid Genesis Saturn controller. It's kind of weird. It has a bunch of different things on it. But they've got it coming out in all kinds of different models. They got a white model. It's compatible with Genesis and Mega Drive cartridges. There is a cartridge adapter that will allow you to use Master System cartridges on it, Mark III cartridges on it, Game Gear, the Sega My Cards. It will also do the SG-1000 and the SC-3000. So it pretty much does everything. It even has an adapter, a plug on the side of it that you could hook up an original Sega CD to it. And
see, I think that's the coolest part right there, because it'll trick the system to say, hey, it's still going to play the Sega CDs, but now it's going to be in HD.
Yep.
I think that's one of the cooler aspects of the console.
Yeah, that is very, very cool that it does that. Region-free, worldwide compatibility. It has scanline options, has scalar options. You can do horizontal stretch and adjust. It has vertical stretch and adjust. Like I said, it comes with the M30 gamepad from 8-Bit Do. It's not a Bluetooth wireless controller. It's an actual 2.5 gigahertz wireless controller, so there's zero lag with it. It's zero lag, zero degradation. Sleep mode after 15 minutes, boasts a 20-hour battery life. And 8-Bit Do makes a pretty good controller. I use a lot of their controllers on the retro stuff, and they work well. But it's called the Mega SG. I want to say that it's $200. Let me click the pre-order link here, because now it's been so long I don't even remember. Just give me the white one. That's fine. Their site is not the friendliest site, especially to use on a mobile device. It doesn't.
Yeah, I was noticing that when I pulled it up earlier today. It's a little crammed on there.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool because they got a lot of pictures and it looks real pretty and everything like that. But when you just want to find one thing on here, it's not the best unless you pull it up on your computer. And I really don't want to do that because I don't want to mess up the stream any more than it already is. But I want to say it's $189. I don't think it's any more expensive than the.
Yeah, it says it's $189.99.
Okay. That's good because I can't get it to pull up. It's not.
Yeah, pre-orders will ship April 2019.
April, okay. I knew it was something like that. I knew it was soon, but I couldn't remember exactly when it was. But they kind of came from out of the blue. I have no idea how much the adapters are going to be, but it's very cool though that they're going to have adapters to do the Mark games, the Game Gear games, everything like that. Because there is a few games that they weren't released in America that you can get on the Japanese system, which is pretty cool. So, sticking with the Sega Genesis theme, the retro receiver for the Sega Genesis is finally coming out from 8-Bit Do. I don't know what took them so long to do this. They've had them for the NES, they have them for the Super NES, and now they finally have them for the Genesis. So they're going to have a Bluetooth version of the M30 controller that comes with the analog. But what's cool about this is you can pair up your PS4, your PlayStation 3, your Xbox, the Switch Pro controller, the Wii U Pro controller. You can do Wiimotes, you can do Joy-Cons. You could do they have the DIY kits, which I have. I've done them for the NES, the Super NES, and the Genesis controller. I went ahead and did the Genesis controller, even though there wasn't a receiver out for it yet, just because I knew it was coming.
Might as well be prepared for when it's coming.
I was very prepared, but mostly I was using it on the Switch. To play the Genesis games with. I could connect it to the Switch, but like this is a Super Famicom, actual, honest to God, Nintendo Super Famicom controller, but it's Bluetooth. You just take the guts out, you put the Bluetooth guts in, it still uses the same pads and buttons and everything, and it's pretty much essentially a real controller with new insides in it. But
with a better than a 2.5 foot controller cord like the Famicom had.
Exactly. Yeah, it's got a little longer cord in it. So so this is finally coming out. So I'm very excited about that. I can finally use my Genesis controller wired on the Sega Genesis, or wireless on the Sega Genesis, and now I have almost every retro console wireless with real controllers, not 8-Bit Do controllers, but actual real controllers on them, which is pretty cool. I like that idea. So, and that one's, I think it's only $20 on Amazon, ships the end of the month, so it's fairly inexpensive.
Nice.
And I think the 8-Bit do-it-yourself things are $20 as well. The shipping on those are a little more expensive. You have to buy them directly from them, and they come from Japan, so or China or wherever they're at. I don't remember.
Overseas,
anyway, somewhere over there. Last but not least, for you Everdrive people out there, there's a new SD to Super NES Pro coming out. Crits announced it the other day. It's a new generation. Should be out this month. It's got a huge hardware update, so it's going to have more powerful features. I have a feeling that you'll be able to use probably nearly 99% of the ROMs for those games that use the Super FX chip that you couldn't necessarily use before. They've worked on this, but on the old one, but it had some issues with it that not all games would work. I have a feeling with this one, he's probably got it figured out now that they will all work on there. Because just the picture of the board that he shows on Twitter is definitely way more intricate and has a lot more stuff on it than the other one did. So I'm guessing that he's figured out how to emulate all those chips. There's like 3 little chips right there. Those are probably all the Super FX chips on there. I would love to have one. It would be really cool. I know these are probably going to be about $300.
Probably so,
because most of the SD to Super NES game one before was, I want to say, $199.
I'm not really sure.
He actually has them marked down right now to $167 because he's trying to move stock before the new ones come out.
Right.
Which, I mean, if you've got $200, I do love my Everdrives. I will say that I do enjoy having them, because especially when I'm doing streams, I don't have to swap discs. I just go back and pick another game and go.
Right.
It is a convenience thing that usually they work pretty well. I've never had any issues with any of the ones I've had. But
well, I do know, like with the original SD to SNES, from what I've understood around the speedrunning community, is that particular flash drive or flash cart, I know, had some issues with save states. Like for some things, you just would not be able to use save states. I don't know if it didn't have enough information or RAM on the inside of the cartridge or what, but I know that there was a lot of people having issues, which would make them maybe seek out other flash carts as an alternative. Even though the SD2 SNES is kind of a name, but I believe that's something that they've fixed with this one as well, and I think that'll be the big thing, because it's nice to play the Super Effects games, but really a lot of people that use those flash carts do speedrun, and they heavily rely on save states. So if the save states doesn't work, then the cartridge is really of no use to them. So I think that'll be a big, strong selling point for this particular model when it comes out.
Yeah, and you're probably right. I think I remember seeing somewhere somebody said something about the save states were improved on it. There hasn't been a ton of information come out yet. It was kind of came out of the blue, but that's usually the way Crits does things anyway. He usually just throws them out there.
Oh, hey, by the way, this is something I'm working on.
Yeah, by the way, this will be out in a couple weeks. Get your pocketbook ready.
Right.
So who knows? You may end up being able to find some of the older versions on eBay for a little cheap. People might be selling them, wanting to get the newest one.
It's definitely possible.
Yeah, I have the one for the Super NES, but it's not the SD one. It's not the one that does the Super FX stuff. It's just the plain old NES, or Super NES, which is fine with me.
Right.
Most of the games, the Super FX games, that I have the cartridges of them, so I don't really necessarily need them on a flash card to have it, for the handful of them that I have. But
right, there's only so many.
Yeah. But it's definitely cool that they're keeping up with that. So you always wonder what they can do, what better they can do with those. There's only so much you can do with the flash card.
Right.
So. All right. A couple things I wanted to talk about real quick. Since we were gone, is ROMs and emulation. Speaking of flash cards and things, Nintendo had really about the time last show we did, Nintendo really started coming down hard on the ROM hosting sites like MU Paradise. I didn't realize, I knew I'd been on that website very, very, very long time. I didn't realize that thing had been around for 18 years. Technically, they're still around. They just don't have links to the ROMs on their sites. But if you look hard enough, there is actually a text. Well, the last time I saw it, there is actually a text thing that you can load into Chrome that will actually display the links to download the ROMs from the site. They're still there, just the download links are gone. But you can actually hack the site to get the links back up again. I haven't tried it yet. I don't really necessarily need it. I have all the games on my flash cards and my Raspberry Pi and stuff that I would ever need. But there may be a CD game or something. There's the one thing that they've really started to do a lot of is translations here lately with different games. And unless you own the original game and can rip it yourself, it's kind of hard to get a hold of some of those games. And it's easier to download a ROM of it, then patch it, and then burn it than it is to seek out and buy the game. But some of them are cheap enough that you can import them from Japan and stuff like that. A lot of people are crying foul because they're worried about digital preservation. I understand why Nintendo did it. I understand why they did it now, because it happened about the time that their online service come up where they were offering NES games free if you paid for the Nintendo Online. So but what's funny is it's just that one time it was like bam, and then you never heard anything about it again. It's like they didn't really stomp out a bunch of them. They just kind of went after
made an example out of the one.
Kind of what it feels like. It just kind of feels like they just made an example out of it, and then that was it. Where do you stand with ROMs? What is your feelings on having them, regardless of whether you use them or not or download them or not? Just the point that they are there when so many of these things may start disappearing after a while, especially CD games.
Well, I feel like on a preservation stance, as you mentioned, it is important because as these games get older, you're going to run into disk rot, you're going to run into chip rot. They don't last forever. I mean, you could take care of it as perfect as you possibly can. Eventually, they're going to start breaking down. So they're not going to be around for forever. Right. And at that point, since everything's digital, that's the logical stance to back them up to where they're always going to be available. Now, the legalities of it have always been kind of a gray area at best. I know that some people say, oh, they're just illegal flat out. Some people say, oh, no, they're legal if you have the physical copy. So whatever the actual legalities is, the fact of the matter is that Nintendo and these other publishers and developers are well within their legal right to say, this is our intellectual property. And we want to protect it by taken down this site that is essentially offering pirated software. And as you said, it makes sense that they did it when they did because, with their online service, like you said, with the NES games available for the paid service. And honestly, I'm surprised that they haven't cracked down sooner because, with a virtual console for the last 2 or 3 console generations, it's been a huge thing for them.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that they would choose now as opposed to before. And, it's possible that maybe they were kind of aware of it, but they didn't really feel like it was a threat. Maybe the new president is like, no, we need to start ironing on the. But then, like you said, it is odd that they only went for one. I mean, people are so quick to get upset about it, but it's not like there's not a million other ROM sites out there. And honestly, Emu Paradise, even when I did do emulation back in the day, I never got them from Emu Paradise because there was always ads on that site. Yeah. Every time I went to that site, I picked up something that I didn't want.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is that they're still out there if you look. And even if they weren't, I feel like enough people have them on flash carts, enough people have them backed up on their own personal backups to where those games aren't going to go anywhere. I mean, they are backed up in some form or fashion, whether it's hosted on a website or if it's just on somebody's personal machine. They're still there.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have discs that I burnt back in '99 for the Dreamcast with ROMs for Super NES, and Genesis. I've got them all. I still have those discs. Have they been popped into the Dreamcast in a while? No, but
not likely.
They're on the dresser over there. In fact, I think. Well, I must have moved. I was going to say for the longest time, I had a CD sitting right here next to the computer for some odd reason that had every N64 game on it. I don't know why it was here. I had it at one point for some reason, emulator, I guess. But somebody somewhere always, but what's funny is there's a lot of Facebook groups that were into it that immediately, when Nintendo put the hammer down, they immediately not closed the doors, but they went private. So nobody else could come in. Nobody could see what was on there. But, they're still there. All you got to do is get an invite to it. Of course, I don't know how many people they're actually inviting these days, because you don't know if it's a sleeper cell agent from Nintendo that may come on there.
Right.
Oh, no, Sam Fisher's coming to take my ROMs away. It's like... But I don't know. It's very interesting. What I figured would happen is I figured the aftermarket prices of retro games would go up. But what has actually happened is they've kind of went down. Some of them, not all of them. Mostly it seems like your NES prices have kind of come down a little bit. Super NES prices have come down a little bit. N64 have kind of went up.
I don't get that.
I don't either. I don't understand that either. But it seems like the only thing that I can figure out is with the N64 is that generation is now out of college, has jobs, and has disposable income. So
breaking into the collecting.
Yeah, so now they're getting into collecting, and that's what they had as a kid. Where we had NES and Genesis. They had well. I had NES and Genesis. I really had Atari and Odyssey, but I'm not going to go too deep into my age, even though I do have a birthday coming up this week. I'm not going to go too deep into age.
Well, happy early birthday.
Oh, thanks.
Don't remind me.
7 more years to 50. Can't wait. But, and that was another thing that, I figured prices would start spiking on, games, because it wasn't just Nintendo. I mean, Nintendo went after them, but it wasn't just Nintendo on that site. It was everything. You could find anything on that site that you wanted. But, I still have a lot of friends that own retro stores that work in the market for, buying collections and stuff for stores and to sell online and things like that. And I've had a lot of them say, we've had a lot of people coming in selling their entire collection of games. NES, Super NES, Genesis, selling it all and getting out of the collecting business. And I see it on Facebook groups. I'm on a lot of Facebook trade site groups, and I see a lot of people going, I'm kind of done with collecting. I'm going to sell my entire collection. Is that causing the market to go down too? Why are people, I understand people go through phases sometimes, but some people, I don't understand why some people spend so much money on a collection, get it, and set on it for like 2 years, and then be like, you know what, I'm done, let's sell it.
Because, that's not long enough for them to appreciate and value. I mean, if you spend all this money and then, wait 10, 15, 20 years, then sure, that collection's probably going to be worth more than what you put into it. But if you just wait a year or two, you're not even going to break even.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just so weird to me. It just doesn't make sense. But, I wonder if that might drive some of the market prices down too, and make people who want to start collecting and make it a little more affordable for them. I think still your games, your Earthbounds, your Panzer Dragoon Sagas, your high-end, expensive, rare, hard-to-find games, which, like I told you the other day, I still don't understand why Earthbound is over $150. It doesn't make sense, because I agree. For a game that is so rare, I see it so often for trade or for sale or whatever, that it's like, how can that game be so rare when I see it all the time?
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, I don't know. If I didn't have a copy, or if something happened to my copy, God forbid, I'd be so sad because that's my favorite game. If something were to happen to my copy, you better believe I'd go out and buy another copy, and price be damned. I mean, it's like I said, it's my favorite game. I love it, but yeah, the price does not justify how. I mean, it's an uncommon game at best.
Yeah.
I mean, and you see some stuff that you just never see, and it's like, oh, that's only a $25 game, but I've never seen it in the wild. But this one, it's like, I've seen 12 copies this year so far, and it's still like 160,
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. It's like I say, no matter how You know, I got laid off twice. You know, it was this and that. I had Panzer Dragoon Saga in the closet, and I never plan on selling that game unless I just absolutely have nothing left but the shirt on my back. You know, I'm not planning, because I will never. That game's $600 or more. I will never be able to afford a game like that again. I was trying to think the other day. I picked up a game. I was just looking through here that I thought that I'd never seen before. I don't even remember what system it was for, and it wasn't that expensive, but it was one that I've never, you never see. The rareness factor is the app that I use will actually rank rarity, so you can actually, they rank it from out of 12. You know, so some games you'll see, and it's like, this game's a rarity of 9 out of 12, but it's only $20. You know, your Earthbound is a 6 out of 12 or a 5 out of 12. It's $160. It's like, I don't understand. I guess maybe popularity has something to do with it too. Maybe.
Oh yeah, I think that's a big part, especially with you know, the large cult following that surrounds Earthbound in particular, and you know, it's. I'll be the first to say, yeah, I mean, the game, I love it to death, but it is kind of overrated, and I'm partially to blame in making it overrated. But I mean, you know, you got to call it like it is.
Yeah, well, you know, it's like, you know, that's just, you know, when I read stories about the entire people selling entire collections and cashing them in and stuff like that, immediately that's when I go, okay, here we go. Here's where the fall's going to come. You're going to get a bunch of people starting, and then prices are just going to. Like, even though I don't care, you know, I have a lot of games. I track how much they're worth. I try to get them as cheap as possible. But in the end, do I really care that I have X amount of dollars worth of games? No, I don't. I mean, my insurance does, but I don't.
It's important to have for insurance purposes, and it's nice to be justified in what you've spent.
Yeah.
But I mean, if the prices went down, I'd still love my collection. I mean, I would still play the games. I would still enjoy collecting.
Yeah.
And I'd probably enjoy it more because I'd be able to get games for dirt cheap that I wouldn't have been able to get that cheap before.
Oh, and that's, you know, it's like I've said back in the day, man, I would go to flea markets and they would have boxes of NES games for $1 a piece, and I would buy the entire box for like $20. Well, I'll buy them all off of you. How much you sell them to me for? I'll give you the whole box for $25. You know, there'd be 50 games in there.
Sold.
Yeah. You know, and nobody else was doing it, but nobody thought at that time that games were going to be worth anything. And I can't put a finger on, no matter how much research I do, I can't put a finger on when that changed.
And what was the variable that caused that turning point?
Yeah, what caused that? I have no idea. I have yet, and I can't even find anything. You know, authors. I read either read or listen. I listen to a lot of books because I'm on the road a lot, and even I don't even hear from them saying, "Well, you know, in 1998, you know, people started realizing that, you know, this game only had," and prices began to, you know, no. I mean, I'm guessing maybe when eBay got popular, maybe. I don't know. I think eBay had a lot to do with it. Because
I think, I think Blockbuster starting to, when they were in the early rumblings of getting rid of stock and all this other stuff, I think that could have helped a lot as well, because you know, that was when you started seeing exclusives for the first time. You had these Blockbuster exclusives that you couldn't get anywhere else. And then, you know, they're out in the wild for dirt cheap, and then people start realizing you can't get this anywhere anymore. And I think that might have been part of what kind of added to it. But yeah, online sales like Yahoo auctions and eBay and stuff like that probably definitely contributed to it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's very weird, but it's just odd to see people, you know, starting to get rid of those collections, and and then I read other people. It's like, well, you know, I had a huge collection and then I sold it, and now I'm starting to collect again.
Yeah, it's a constant influx. Like, I don't think this is the beginning of the end, or I don't think the bubbles pop, as they say. I think that this is just the ebb and flow that we're all used to. You know, some things are going to go up, some things are going to go down, and you know, they may even back out eventually. But I don't think that this is really any cause for alarm as far as the hobby goes. I mean, who's to say? You know, it's one of those things that if you know, you wouldn't have to speculate. You know, it's just, we have to wait and see.
Well, and it's another one of those things. Is it's kind of a new hobby. This whole thing is kind of new as far as value goes. I don't know how far back they've actually been tracking values of games, but, you know, I know I bought all these games on eBay back in the day. A lot of the games that I have, and or at flea markets and stuff like that. And this was in the late '90s, early aughts, and they sat in a closet in a box. You know, I bought them. I got married in 2003, and after 2003, I didn't buy another retro game until maybe 7 years ago, 6, 7 years ago. You know, they just set up in a closet, and I mean, a buddy gave me a box of them. You know, it's like I've told you before, and probably said it on here before. You know, he just brought a box of games and said, "Here you go. I know you like old games. You can have these." And it was Super Castlevania. It was Castlevania 1, 2, and 3. It was Legend of Zelda 1 and 2. It was Axe Battler for the Saturn, and Batman Forever for the Saturn, and you know, all these games and I just went, "Oh, awesome, thanks." I'll just put them up in the closet with the rest of them.
Yeah. I'll sort these out at some point.
Yeah, you know, it's like I didn't know there was any value to them. You know, even Panzer Dragoon Saga, I paid $50 for it, $50 or $70 for it back in 1998. Put it up in the closet, and it sat there until somebody went, "Hey, you got a copy of Panzer Dragoon Saga?" "Yeah." "You know how much that thing's worth?" No. It's worth money. Now I won't even hardly touch it unless I have gloves on, because I'm afraid to take it off the shelf, and I'm afraid I'll drop it and break the case and
or ruin it with the oils in your finger.
It's like, this is ridiculous. But you know, it's like, you know, so when did we put a value on this? You know, that then it's, you know, and have we maybe not peaked? Maybe this is just the peak, and it's going to go down, and then it'll flux up again, you know, like all collecting does. Maybe we've never had that huge ebb and flow. Maybe this is the first huge flow of the ebb that we're having, or the ebb of the flow, or possible. Whatever. You know, I mean, you know, it's really probably maybe in the past, 15 years or less, probably they've been keeping track of prices. I'd say probably less than, I'd say it's probably more like 10. Other than your shops, you know, you always had your shops, but there was never anything definitive to go on. I don't know how long like video game price charting has been around, or anything like that. So I've never been to a video game store that's been around more than 4 or 5 or 7 years. So I can't go into an old store and say, "Hey, 15 years ago when you were open, how were you pricing games? Were you just going on eBay and saying, okay, this is what they're pricing them on eBay for, so I'll take them and maybe shave 10 or 15% off here to people get, you know, a good deal," or, you know, I don't know how anybody did any of that. So I don't know anybody that's had a shop that long. So if anybody out there does, I would love to know, because, you know, that stuff interests me. That's what I want to know, is like, when did we hit this plateau of, man, this game is worth this much? And you know, I know games like Panzer Dragoon, there's only 20,000 of them in existence, so of course that one's going to be by default. I mean, so, but you know, I mean, I don't even know how many copies of Earthbound's out there. I'd say there's probably more than that, but it wasn't a million seller like you know, Zelda or Mario or you know, any of the other ones. But you know, I don't know. You know, numbers, physical copies out there have a lot to do with it and stuff. But I don't know. It's a very weird and fickle market. That's why I just kind of try to stay off of eBay and and go on Facebook Marketplace and go, "Ooh, this guy's selling something, and they don't know what it is. I'll take it for whatever he's selling it for." You know,
and that's where you still look at it like flea markets and stuff, where everything's the same cost across the board.
Yep, that's true. So, all right, well, I think that's going to about do it for the show. Is there anything going on, Danny, that you want to tell everybody that you might have going on the next week or two? Anything? Not
really. I'm going out of town next week, work. So yay for that.
Yay for out-of-town work.
You know, in case anybody wanted to know.
Anybody want to know my work schedule?
Right. But as far as like the stream or anything like that, there's nothing really major coming up. Just doing my thing.
All right, cool. I know next Sunday, we'll have a regular podcast. Probably, I'm going to guess, around the regular time. I do have family coming in. I don't know when they're leaving. I don't know if they're leaving Sunday or Monday. So, tentatively on the 16th or the 17th, we're going to have a show. Then on the 24th, we'll try to have another show if you're in town. If you're how things are working. But we'll definitely have a review show that we've started doing once a month. This month's indie game that we're reviewing is Tangle Deep. That's on the PC and the Nintendo Switch. It's a 16-bit roguelike RPG. It's very, very cool. It's very good, and there's not a whole lot out there like it. It has permadeath in it, which is always nice. So if you die, you lose everything. I chose the route to not have permadeath because I do not like permadeath.
Same.
I
like keeping my my progress. Thanks.
Yeah, I will take the penalty of the XP and the gold. That's fine, but I like my stuff. So, but we'll be reviewing that on the stream here in 2 weeks. And I said like next week we'll have a regular show. Hopefully we'll have another Back to Bits show in 2 weeks, depending on everybody's work schedule and who the what and where. Because when everybody works out of town, sometimes it's hard to get schedules together, especially when you have 3 other shows that you have to try to get together too. So. All right, guys. Well, thanks a lot for joining us. Hope you all enjoy it. Subscribe, follow us on Twitter, and that way you can keep up with exactly when we will be going live with the next show. And we will catch you all next time.
Absolutely. Have a good one, guys.